Okay, this is just going to be a quick walkthrough of some of the components in the Adobe Connect room, just to kind of continue our earlier conversation about setting up Adobe Connect. We went in and we logged in to the Adobe Connect space and saw that there are room templates, and then we would build out our own room based on those templates and using those pods. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the pods. If we take a look over here and look at the top menu as a host, remember that you need to be logged in as a host. If you're in as a host, then you'll see the pods available to you. And I'm only going to spend maybe 5 minutes max, and I'm going to talk about just what those pods are. We'll talk about share, notes, and polls as the primary ones that we'll be focused on. Of course, any of these you can find more information about at the Adobe Connect website, as well as kind of more information about kind of how to configure these, and videos just like this one. So, quick note, as I said, many of your pieces will be coming in through a template that you leverage, either from one that you build for your partner organization or one from internal ServiceNow's account. At that point, you'll see a lot of these little pods or objects, and what I want to point out is just a couple things about them. I'm going to focus on the notes one first. If I go to add a new note, you'll see there's a number of ones I've already added to the system. But when I go to add a new note, it comes over into this preparation space, and we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. The other thing I want to point out is each of the pods titles can be set up. So simply double clicking in that space allows you to call it whatever you want. And of course, spaces are acceptable, as are capital letters. Then you can come in and build your note with the appropriate format, style, and text of your choice. And of course, you can change colors. These are great tools for things like, as you can see in my example, welcome notes, or maybe people are working on labs, and I put a standard note out there that says, if you have a question or you're stuck on a lab, give a red X. When you finish the lab, give a green check. And those types of things are great for the notes component. So that's kind of what those pieces are. Now, you can drag them into the room in the space that you want, but I'm going to get rid of mine. You can get rid of them simply by going to hide. Now, the other pod that I wanted to spend a little time talking about is the share. Now, the share that we're used to is the standard share in which you share your screen, and that's one that I'll show in just a moment. But I wanted to point something else about the share pod. If you take the share pod, it's possible to take a share pod and bring something in it. So I have a little share pod here, and if I choose to, what I can do is talk about what I want to share, like a document or some other object. If I share a document, then what I'm really doing is bringing something in or importing it. And when I bring that component in, if it's a Swift file, an SWF file, in other words, a Flash or something along those lines, it'll play. And that's actually how we get these other pods. They're actually shares. So people ask about the countdown timer. The countdown timer is actually an SWF file. And so, of course, that comes with the other pieces to that, which is if they don't have Flash enabled on their system, then they won't be able to see it. So just something else to kind of think about with regard to using those. There are a number of those pieces that are considered quote-unquote plugins at the Adobe Connect website. And all you're doing with those plugins is you're bringing them into a share and then saving the share with that title and then using that share. So that's what those things are, and that's how you get those timers. And again, you just go to the Adobe Connect site and look for those plugins. Rochambeau is another one, or rock, scissors, paper. Is another one of those kind of examples that's out there. So be aware of that. Take an opportunity to take a look at those. I'm going to go past share and notes though and talk about polls. Poll questions are very useful. Some people will use them to go, here's the module in the lab, tell me when you're done or if you have problems. For myself, I typically won't do those because I want other kinds of feedback from my poll questions. When you build out new poll questions, and I'll build one out over here, you note that you can have the question and or the answers. But when you configure the poll, you have the different question type, which includes multiple choice, multiple answer, and kind of open-ended or short answer. So you can pick and save those as well to leverage into your overall workspace by adding any one of these pods. Now there are other pods to explore, but these are the ones we primarily use when delivering in the Adobe Connect environment. Now I'm going to talk about two other pieces here in the overall environment to make sure that you're comfortable and have some familiarity with these. One of those is this trainer prep space. That prep space can be accessed by going to Meeting. And if you look at Meeting, you'll notice that down here you have Presenter Only area. That Presenter Only area is that space that you could see where I built the share and the notes, and they allow me to stage those components. And so I could build new ones or kind of set them up before sliding them into the main screen. And so that's kind of where those pods get set up, and obviously disabling it will make that disappear. Many people find when they go into their first Adobe Connect room as a host, they don't see that piece and they wonder how they get that. It's simply by going to the Meeting and the drop down. So that's the presenter area and the prep area. Getting rid of these polls, I'll kind of move them out and just hide them. I want to bring that up as a point as well. All of these pods that I have that I've built, they all exist and stay with the association of this room that I've built for myself. So over time, if you tend to be a little sloppy about that like I am, you'll find you have lots and lots and lots of pods that may not be used. So it would be a good idea, like maintenance-wise, to go through and clean those out from time to time and make sure that you're kind of keeping on top of that. This guy, the engagement dashboard, will only show in the presenter area. So you can kind of only see that when you're using the presenter area. It is a useful thing because it shows attendees. Keep in mind, though, it only shows the attendees when they're clicked on this screen. So if perhaps maybe they're reading their book, but they're watching or listening to you, if the highlighted screen in their window is not the Adobe Connect environment, it will show them as inactive. So it's not 100% accurate in terms of whether they're paying attention or not, but it can be useful. Last but not least, I want to talk about the layout. So as a host, you have this layout bar, and what this layout bar allows you to do is assemble collections of pods and move to them quickly or easily. So currently, for instance, my layout has welcome notes because it's my intro screen. It's what I log in with how to log in and when I'll start speaking and that information, and then some general poll questions to get the audience engaged and kind of giving some feedback so that I know what I'll be teaching in terms of what their needs are as an audience. Then there's the attendees pod and the chat pod. If I want to move to demonstration when I start teaching the class, I simply go to this other layout, which shows different pods. This layout shows attendees in chat, of course, but it also shows the share screen pod. So it's easy to move from one layout to another without dragging and dropping all the different pods back and forth. That's the purpose of layouts. Now, most training or trainers will have 2 or 3 layouts. I have an introduction layout, and then I have my teaching layout, which is this. In between multi-day classes, I have a kind of mid-class check. I use this for the beginnings of other day classes. Feel free to build these layouts for yourself. Some trainers build many. They have one when they're doing labs, and a different one when they're lecturing, and a different one before class, and a different one after class. Absolutely fine. You must maintain them. Make sure the pods are accurate in them. Then you'll notice in my room I have some additional layouts. These are not layouts I typically use, but they came with the template, so I continue to just leave them there. I can get rid of those if I don't use them, but they are handy from time to time if I ever need them. That's what they're there for. And then this is a, I believe, sample layout that one of you guys did as you were practicing class with me. So we've seen the Adobe Connect room. We've seen the idea that the Adobe Connect login information and that they have different rooms or meetings. Those meetings can be derived from a template in which the pods are already configured, but for the most part you'll be adapting that template for yourself, potentially adding dial-in if you need to, or not if you choose not to, and then organizing the pods and configuring the pods to suit your needs, and then saving that out into your room that you would give your students information on. I hope this has been helpful.